Right, Buddhism is healing. I think it's a very good title that you have chosen because it is the poster by the medical faculty, and it's very nice coming back here after decades. Because when we talk about Buddhism, we always talk about healing. It's one of those very interesting uniqueness of early Buddhism. I mentioned early Buddhism because Buddhism is 2,500 years old. So I've tried to study all of those traditions. And of course, I started off with early Buddhism. And after studying all those different traditions, I find that there's still so much to study in early Buddhism. So I kind of took a full circle and came back to early Buddhism. So early Buddhism talks a lot about healing. You can say the whole of early Buddhism is about healing. I'll start with a very beautiful story in this connection about healing. The Buddha, as usual, was teaching on this teaching tour, rather. And he came to this place, a lot of people were waiting, ready to listen to him. But he sat down very quietly that day without saying a word. People wondering why. People were a bit shy to ask, but they knew the Buddha was not ready. And then, of course, the Buddha and the monks have taken their meal, and the sun has passed the meridian, past noon. And then here comes along this man running, breathless, and said, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I lost my cow and I have to look for her in the forest. And by the time I found her, I looked at the sky and saw the sun was already past the meridian. I said, oh, okay, the Buddha and the monks have already taken their meal, and he would be giving his teaching. At least, I don't miss the teaching. So here I am, and he's breathless and tired and hungry and lost the cow. And the Buddha said, okay, now we are ready. Okay, but first, please feed this hungry man. So that's what the Buddha's first lesson was. He said, please feed the hungry man. And once the man has eaten, then his discourse was really beautiful. He said, hunger is the greatest of diseases. Of all diseases, hunger is the greatest. There's simple statements of what sometimes can have very profound meaning. So what he meant is, I mean, we get sick, we got a headache, you take a Panadol and it's gone, or you come to this hospital, you get healed. Very often the kind of sickness we get, which hospitals can cure, are easy to overcome. But hunger, there's no cure for it. Every day you have to, correct it 3-4 times a day. All right. Of course, he's talking much more than about hunger after food. He's talking about different levels of hunger, right? Hungry on a mental level, and we call it craving. We can call it ignorance when we don't have this hunger for knowledge, for example. So you can see here this idea of health is already there, where in Dhammapada 204, the Buddha says, health is the highest gain. In fact, the word for gain here, labha, can also mean profit. Right? So it says the highest profit you can make is health. Because no matter how much money you make, if you don't take care of your health, you won't be able to spend that money, and all that money will go to the health care, to the doctors. So you have to be healthy. Again, here you have 2 levels of health. Normal physical health, which is not too difficult to get. And this country stresses a lot on that aspect. And as you age, you find that's very important for me. That I'll be talking a bit about how I maintain myself healthy through Buddhism towards the end of this talk. And also there is a higher level of health, that is mental health. And this is what the Buddha really cares about, he really teaches. We are caught up with greed, hate, delusion. Those are called the 3 poisons. Those are the things that bring us down to a subhuman level, right? So the healthy level is to be human, to start being human, right? And that's what the 5 precepts are about. Some may wonder, why do we have 5 precepts? Because those are the 5 rules that we often break. And when we do break them, especially habitually, in a big way, then we bring ourselves down to the subhuman level. Right? For example, if you are violent, you become a hell being. I don't say become like a hell being. Your mind is that of a hell being. You may have a body of a human, but the mind is that of a violent hell being. And if you have a lot of unsatisfiable craving, I mean, you collect things, but you don't really enjoy them. You do not know how to share things. Then you're like a predator, a ghost. You have things, but you are not able to enjoy. That's not very healthy. And if you are not eager to learn, I mean, you're quite contented to just just work, make money, and do what you can get with the money, and that's all to life. Then it's a very strikingly predictable life like that of an animal. So it goes on like that. We get caught up with this cycle, and you sink down into the subhuman level. That is what the Buddha teaches us not to suffer, not to fall below the subhuman plane by keeping the five precepts. So the five precepts, in other words, we're talking about values. What are the values that really make our life worthwhile, happy, useful, progressive? The first precept is against killing. Is about value of life. Second precept, if you're alive, you should be happy. And you're happy because you have things, you work, you have money, you can do things. So that's the second precept, not to steal, not to take away what is rightfully yours or others. The third precept is about freedom. Right? Sexual misconduct is about the right to say no, basically. All right? And then all these things I mentioned, these three precepts must be based on truth. That's the fourth precept, against lying. Now we come to the fifth one. The fifth one is against taking intoxicants and being drunk and so on. This is about mindfulness. Right? Nowadays, we talk a lot about mindfulness. The whole world is being swept by mindfulness because of Buddhism. And I'll have to talk about this today because this is part of this very important aspect of mental health that's changing the world in manner of speaking, called mindfulness, right? But before that, a bit more about Buddhism. You can see in Buddhist training, this idea of health is very important, even in the basic idea of what is called a Buddhist training, the basic Buddhist training. There are what are called three trainings if you become a Buddhist. The first training is called training in moral virtue, the precepts, as I already mentioned. Basically, we have to discipline our body and speech first before you can meditate. The first three precepts protect your body, in manner of speaking, because the first three precepts are broken to the body, the actions of the body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. The fourth precept is against lying, it's about speech, right? So the fifth precept against drunkenness is to make sure you don't break the other four, right? So this moral training is about disciplining, beautifying your body and speech, calming your body and speech down so that you're able to sit peacefully, not worry, did I do this, did I do that? Because when you meditate and your mind is calm, these memories come back. Oh, I did this, I did that, and you feel very troubled and sad and so on, right? So the skipping of the precepts is very important as the basis for good meditation, all right? So this is the second training in the mind. So this is where we see this body. We should not take for granted this body. It is impermanent. So impermanence means bad health. It can also mean good health if you take care of this body, right? So in order that the body is going to be healthy and happy, your mind has to be healthy and happy, right? So in other words, it's easier for the body to be healthy when the mind is positive. Of course, happy, healthy mind, healthy body, that's in an equilibrium, that's definitely the ideal. But the idea of developing your mind so that you are happy, body and mind, is important at this stage. But these two are still instrumental, right? They're not the goal. In a sense, in a small way, the goal is this third training, the training of the spirit. I call it the spirit, but traditionally it's called training in wisdom. You understand that the spirit of the training, the spirit of Buddhism, what Buddhism is about. This wisdom, the idea is to bring us spiritual health. And one of the most common causes of ill health is when we identify with things. This is a very profound idea, which can take a series of lectures by itself. But let me just summarize for today. Whenever we identify with something, we see something, we see someone, and we tend to identify with this thing or this person because of some past experience that we have. Very often, we judge our present experience through our past memories. In other words, we tell ourselves, oh, okay, I've experienced this person, someone like him before, and he was good to me. So this person before me must be good too. If you look at someone and say, oh, I had a bad experience with someone who looked like him or with him, so now he's going to be bad too. So you have this kind of idea we project, and then we tend to react that way. So it's a very reactive kind of situation. So this is called identifying with the object, right? So here in this third training, the keyword here is non-self. In other words, we be present today as if that's the only moment that we have. And this is another healthy idea we should keep in mind. If you really look at Buddhist psychology, and I'm working on that book on Buddhist psychology now, SD 60.1E, it's a very interesting project where we are told by this Abhidhamma tradition that all there is just this present moment. That's all there is. The past is gone. You cannot bring it back. Even our memories of the past are always constructed. They're not accurate. We often make mistakes about those memories. And the future, you notice we plan things, we say, I'm going to do this, but when the time actually comes, you actually change your mind or something else happens. So the only reality you actually have is right now. So this is another thing about identifying yourself. All you can do is just be present. You cannot do more than that, in other words, all right? So these are called the three characteristics of life. Everything is impermanent, everything changes. Our body changes, our health changes, so we have to really take care of it. And there is suffering, dukkha. This brings pain, so you have to do something about this. And you can make matters better, or you can be healthier, suffer less by not identifying with pain, with the situation around you, and so on. In other words, you take everything that's going around you as right now, this is what's happening, and watching it and being there. That's the meaning there. It doesn't mean you let go, you have nothing to do with what's going on. On the contrary, you are present, you are with what's going on right now. That's the meaning. Right? So this idea of permanence means when we live, we see changes. So the whole idea is what? Is to learn. To live is to learn because of these changes. You have to watch what's going on, see the patterns. And you begin to see in this pattern, there is always some kind of pain. We don't like too much change. Or when there's change, we lose things. So we're not too happy, right? So in other words, to learn also means is to feel. Of course, you feel, in Buddhism, you have a very important sense of it. It's not like the ordinary sense of the word feel. It means to look what's going on right now and ask yourself, how do I feel about this right now? And you notice you either like it or you don't like it. There's always this ding dong, this swing, you know. And again, when we like it, it's something from the past that influenced us. When we don't like it, same thing, something from the past influenced us. Now, once we know this kind of situation we are caught in, we're able to break free from this and really decide what we should really want to do with the present. So in other words here, when we learn, we also learn to see really what's going on in our lives, and we can really make the right decisions. In this sense, we do have free will. You find nowadays it's quite fashionable among some psychologists and philosophers, even Buddhists, to say that we don't really have any free will, which I don't agree. Yeah, I mean, if you're foolish, you don't think for yourself, you simply follow what people tell you, you have no free will. Yeah, that's possible. But if you really are looking for the truth and you want to be a good Buddhist and you're a meditator, you will see that there is free will. Otherwise, we will not be able to change. Right? So the idea of free will is important in that sense. Now we come to a little deeper, since we've come this far, where the Buddha goes on to tell us what is it that's really important in our lives. How do we know things? What really is there to know? What can we know? It's a bit of theory of knowledge, if you like. So here, the Buddha makes a very simple statement. And this, again, a very amazing thing about the Buddha. He can say some very simple words, and it covers this very profound idea. He says in one of the suttas, the sutta is called The All. Even the title is very simple. He says, what is the all? All there is, all that there is. Right? You probably will say, oh, atoms. But then they're not. But they're useful to science, yeah. But practical life is a bit not so useful. The Buddha says, all that there is are your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the six senses. That's all there is. And all that, there is another six, right? Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. That's all there is, the Buddha says. And he throws a challenge, says, if anyone can add anything new to this, it's not possible. This person will be troubled and vexed. You cannot add anything more to this. Of course, I didn't understand this at first. I did some philosophy when I was much younger. Then I read it. I said, oh, okay, now I understand it better. What he's saying is that all that we can know, our tools of learning, are through our five physical senses and the mind. And that's all we have, right? I mean, if you think about it, what else can you add to it? The way we learn, we can only learn through our five senses. We learn through sensing things, and the mind kind of decides what to do with those sensing. And of course, you have the sense objects. Those are the objects of learning. Those are what we can know. The senses are our tools of learning. The sense objects are the objects of knowledge, if you like, the things we can learn. And what allows us to learn is another set of six things, the six consciousnesses: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. Right? So you have altogether, these are called the 18 elements. So you have Buddhist psychology there, and also the theory of knowledge. All right. And when we know all these things, then we know ourselves better also. So there is a way we should look at all these things that the Buddha teaches us. He summarizes all these things that we can know. Instead of six, he kind of combined them into four. He speaks of all that you can experience are the seen, the heard, the sense, and the cognized, or the known. See, hear, sense, know. Four things. All right? So let me just read this very beautiful passage called the Bahiya training, because this is the training he gave to this wanderer, this ascetic called Bahiya. And by listening to this, he actually became an arhat. He became awakened just by listening to this, but he was ready, unlike us. Here the Buddha says in the scripture called the Udana, he says here, in things that are to be seen, heard, sensed, and cognized by you, in the seen there will only be the seen. Whatever you see, there's only the seen. In the heard, there will only be the heard. Whatever you hear is just sound. In the sense, there will only be the sensed. The sense here are taste, touch, and smell. Okay? And cognize, of course, thinking and knowing. There is just that. Don't make a bigger deal of it, because if you do, then you think it's not going to be pain, it's not going to be healthy. For example, when we see something, when you see, we don't just see, we are educated people, so we read. We read. So for us, reading is also healing, because reading helps us to stay safe and healthy. Hearing what we hear sounds, we don't just hear sounds, we also hear for our health. We listen to music to be at peace. We go to nature, we hear the winds, we hear the peace, the waters, and we are healed. I go to the lake gardens, which is near our place, and it's one place, if you're in Singapore, you must go. Because if you do not go there, you have not seen the most beautiful part of Singapore. There's a floating wetlands there. There are otters there. There are water lizards there. There are water hen there, birds, and all kinds of creatures. It's like a zoo. And you stay up there on the platform, and these creatures are there lying down in the sun. And you breathe in this fresh air, and I do my yoga there. And that is part of the way I stay healthy. So this idea of watching, the seen, the heard, the sense, and the cognize means that's all your senses are. Just be with them, let them do their work. Do not read too much into them. Okay, it's just like you're reading your textbooks. If you read too much into it, you won't learn. You have to know, what is this book trying to tell you? What is all about, right? So now what's interesting here is that the Buddha combines all the six senses into four. Seen, heard. Okay, this is fair enough. The two are there. Then you have the sense. The sense, there are three. There are three senses there. Why don't they combine these three? That is the touch, the taste, and smell, right? Apparently, according to the text, the commentaries, in the case of the eye, light just comes, and then we see things. In the case of sound, vibrations come to our ear and we hear things. But the other three, according to the commentaries, there is an impact. Of course, today we can use the word molecules. For example, how I feel the touch on my skin. There is this impact on the skin, impact of smell on the nose, and of course the ear, okay, the sound on the ear. So there is this sense of impact. Now, what's interesting here, we notice just a kind of a bit of extra thing here. We have instruments and machines to enhance the way our eyes see. We use telescopes, microscopes, and so on. We also have instruments for the ear, right? To listen, stethoscopes and machines to play music and so on. But we don't have machines that can make us taste better or smell better or touch better. We don't have that yet. For some reason, these three senses are still very rudimentary, if you like, okay? And you have to cultivate them, right? Through meditation, perhaps, through some kind of training. So let's look at something else now, right? Let's look on a deeper level. The Buddha teaches not only about this senses and so on. You have heard of the Four Noble Truths. Of course, the Four Noble Truths are a healing paradigm. It is based on a healing metaphor. When you look around everywhere, what do you see? The Buddha often likes to start that way. He asks some basic questions. Let's not bring some really grand idea, but you find you have a lot of difficulty trying to prove it, because there's no proof. There's just belief. Okay. When we look around the world, we see there is always some kind of unsatisfactoriness, some kind of unhappiness, some kind of lack. It's the meaning of suffering. It doesn't mean people are in pain all the time, not at all. It's just that there is something missing, something that you want and you feel you can never get. And there is the cause of it, there is the arising of it because of this feeling of dissatisfaction. Then the Buddha says, if there is this arising, there is also logically an ending. So that's the third truth. And then you have the way of doing it, the path. You take it up and you practice it, and this is the three training I've been talking about earlier. That's the path. Okay. So this is the sequence we are used to, right? First number truth, suffering. Second number truth, the arising or the cause. Third number truth, the ending, and then the path. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is not always the case, by the way. This is when we teach this. This is a very popular sequence. In practice, you actually practice this Four Noble Truth as 1, 2, 4, 3. All right, this is something very interesting little fact we might not know. In other words, we see suffering, we learn about it, and we try to overcome it by understanding the arising of the causes. And then we go to number 4, that's the path. We take the path. And the path is the three trainings: sila, moral virtue, samadhi, mental concentration, meditation, and then wisdom. And then you reach nirvana, which is the ending of suffering. So here you see the sequence is slightly different. This is called a practice sequence. Not many people know this, but it's a very interesting fact in Buddhist training. So this idea of meditation has caught up a lot of people, this idea of looking at ourselves, we see suffering and we overcome it. And you've heard about this in the mindfulness movement that's going on for quite some time now. And the key idea behind this mindfulness movement, anyone remembers the definition of mindfulness? Anyone doing mindfulness training yet? No. All right. So the phrase that this founder of the mindfulness or mindfulness, as someone calls it, is non-judgmental moment-to-moment awareness. This is the basic idea behind mindfulness. And using this short idea from Buddhism, John Kabat-Zinn is become phenomenally successful, phenomenally rich, and he has kind of started a tsunami of change in the health services through meditation. He doesn't use the word meditation, he uses the word mindfulness. Now, the problem is, after a few decades now, people do find some issues with this. Because you see, when the Buddha taught about meditation, it's not just to heal your boredom or your difficulties. It's much more than that. There are ethics, there are moral virtue for training. So this is the missing part in this Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness. This is one of the criticisms against it. Otherwise, it's all right, but it's because of this idea of taking from Buddhism and then saying that he's not a Buddhist, and that creates issues. Because you can't take something from Buddhism and then put it into psychology and say, it works, but it's not Buddhist. I mean, we call it plagiarism in scholarship, isn't it? But the point here is there's something even more serious. There is this idea of ethics. For example, the US Army got interested in mindfulness. And mind you, mindfulness was used in the army. And so the Buddhist critics in the US are very upset. They wrote a lot about this. And all I can tell you is, you can read about this. It's because they're not happy this Kabat-Zinn used mindfulness, helped with the US military to improve combatants' operational effectiveness. Very nice way of saying, better fight and kill better. Now imagine a Buddhist doing that. We don't do that sort of thing. It's totally against our very principles. So this is what some of the Western thinkers, Western Buddhists are speaking out against. Most of us don't know what's going on about this, but at least in the West they do know, and they tell us, or they speak out and they tell us this is not right. Right? Okay, now I'll come to this last part where let me just share a bit about how I, as a practicing Buddhist, keep myself healthy because I'm a Buddhist, because I value Buddhist work. Now I'm 74, right? Okay. I can't remember my age, she remember. So I've been getting all kinds of sicknesses. You know, when you age, you get it, you see. No matter how healthy you are. If not bodily, definitely mentally. The Buddha say you may be healthy bodily for your whole life, but you're hardly healthy mentally for a few seconds. That's quite a strong statement, but it's quite true. You know, we tend to have wrong ideas, we get angry, we want this, we want that, and so on. Right. So one of the most dramatic situation, and I've been coming to this university very often. So I had this neck problem, this very painful cervical vertebra. And to cut a long story short, the doctor looked at it, fMRI and X-ray and so on. He says, okay, here's the bad news. Okay, your I forget the number, 6 or 7, C6 or C7. The bone is rotting. And after 1 year, he says, we have to operate. We'll order a piece of cadaver bone from US. Then we'll remove a bit of bone from your backbone and we put this in. Of course, there's a 1% you may not succeed. You may be paralyzed. And neck down, I said, wow, that's reassuring. Okay, now this is where I want to ask medical students and think about it, is there a way that we can avoid such operations, which are very risky, when we can, for example, be taught some exercise to rebuild the muscles or some kind of diet that could strengthen us in some way, even rebuild our body? Okay. In a sense, because of this, right now, my wife, she became as much of a vegan as possible. And then because of her, I became as much of a vegetarian as I can. And that helped a lot. That helped a lot in my health, right? So I'm not just saying only that, but many other things, right? So, okay. So the doctor said, no, sorry, I operate or not, you have to operate or not operate, let us know. 1 year later, or should I say 1 year before that, I told myself, I have to do some kind of exercise or something that maybe strengthen my neck, bring back some muscles. And the fun part is later on, my shoulder also had pain, again, rotting bone. I said, what's happening to my body? All right, decaying bone. And then a year passed and when this healed, the other shoulder started having this pain. And then lumbar region, the universal pain of all people. So you imagine 4 points of pain. I say, oh, this won't do. This is terrible. So what can I do to deal with these 4 zones of pain? Something I can do. Yoga. I said, no, I'm too old to do all those twisting and turnings. I will not be able to undo myself. So Rana has done some yoga. So I watched some of the things she did, some of the poses she did. I researched lots of stuff on the internet. You can even download books. So I looked for all those, a few exercises where you stretch and bend and you relax that part of the area. And I put together what I call Ayu Yoga, old age yoga or senior yoga. So I start off with simple stretching my hands, warming up, and then start doing putting my arms up skyward. And then in between, I do bend down a jackknife double bend. So my head will be close to my legs. So, and also do all kinds of what's called a cow face, gomukha, where I put my hand at the back like this, and then I put my hand like this. I don't think all of you can do this, And then I hold it. I say 3 namos, okay? Namo tassa bhagavato. So 3 times. So that's about 20 seconds, and then go through this very smooth flow like Tai Chi. It's Indian Tai Chi, you like. I put my palms together, and then now the other side, the other hand like this, okay? And then my other hand with here, all right? So again, I look up and I do it in the garden because you can see the sky. It's really beautiful. So you look up, you see the open sky. And so I go on doing like this. And I did this for 1 year and a few other, they're all together. I do 5 sequences sitting, 4 sequences standing. Standing, of course, I have to do the deep part, right? And that's harder to do. And I close with putting my foot, and this is what the doctors have been trying, making me do, make me walk the catwalk. I said, look, I'm too old for this. I said, try. So I just can't do it, you just lose balance. He said, you see, you need an operation. I said, no, that's not fair. So I've been doing that simple exercise, putting one foot in front and then put my hand up like that. Then I realize I lose balance when I push my focus upwards. I have to bring my focus down right to the ground to feel where the foot presses against the ground. So I thought, wow, Buddhism really teaches something here, because in Buddhism we talk about earth element, see? So you focus on the earth element. And that helps. So I went on like that for 1 year. Finally came the big day again and went for this. The pain was gone totally. No pain in my neck, neither shoulder, lumbar region. No pain. I can bend my head up like that. You can see that, right? I can bend up anywhere I want. See? So, but I said something very stupid to the doctor. I said, I'm sorry to disappoint you. They hard. They said, oh, then I realized I should have said that. No, I was actually happy for them, that they don't have to operate on me. They have to, oops, it's the other way around. Anyway, so that's my story. So I'm going to close here with a short excerpt from a book Ratna is reading, a very beautiful book written by a neurosurgeon called James R. Doty. Anyone heard of him? James R. Doty? You have? Okay, what's the book? Magic Shop. Oh, wow. Okay, so you know what? Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a great book. Okay, so you know what I'm going to say. The introduction. All right, now you're going to read this because I'm giving you this inspiration, and this especially for you all. It's beautiful. Not the introduction. Somewhere at the ending. Oh, toward the end. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's somewhere one of the extremes. Yeah. Okay. He says the stethoscope. Oh, wait, before that. James R. Doty into the Magic Shop, a neurosurgeon's quest to discover the mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart. New York, Avery, which is a Penguin Random House house publication, 2016. And this is page 166. The stethoscope was invented because in 1816, a French physician was too embarrassed to put his ear up to a female patient's chest to listen to her heart and lungs, as was the norm at that time, and instead rolled 24 sheets of paper into a cone to create some distance between them. I think, okay, this is Doty speaking, okay? I think this distance between physician and patient has only grown larger over time. I learned that just by listening to my patients, just by giving them my time and attention and focus, they felt better. I let each of them tell his or her story, and then I acknowledge my patient's struggle, their accomplishments, and their sufferings. And in many cases, this relieved their pain more than any medication I could offer, and at times even more than my surgery. Even today, I tell my students and those residents I teach that while neurosurgery requires an immense amount of technology and sophisticated equipment, my greatest success as a neurosurgeon is a result of caring with an open heart and being present with my patients. Do you think that's beautiful? Okay. All right, so I end what I have to say, and let's hear from you now. How much more time do we have?
Actually, you booked the room until 9, but
Oops. Oh.
yeah, no, it's 8:10, but anytime.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
I leave it to you.
Got a few questions from the start one.
Sure.
This is the six senses, right? The six sense doors. The sixth sense door, which is the mind. So has the one of the functions of the mind is to produce memories.
Produce what, sorry?
Memories. So it can give rise to our sense of a memory.
You say memories?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, memories.
So I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Because I know every scholar or every commentary writer might have a different way of looking at.
You're talking about memories, whether the mind produces memories. Is that what you're saying?
Say just as okay. So the mind. What I understand is that what's different from the sixth sense. What's different between the sixth and the other five is that the mind can also bring up something from past consciousness that's not related to the five senses.
Oh yeah, definitely, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So for example, traumas from very early on in life, just we are sitting there in meditation and then it comes up.
Right.
So is that the consciousness or is that the organ?
Okay, in early Buddhism, the mind is regarded as a sense by itself, sixth sense. So, of course, the early Buddhists recognized the five physical senses. They're called the pancha indriya. Okay, but they're not very important. They don't play a big role. The sutras normally speak of the sixth sense basis, salayatana, sixth sense basis, and the sixth one is the most tricky one. That's the mind. Of course, we cannot function with our five physical senses by themselves. It's really the mind that's working behind each of the five senses. So you have the five sense objects plus the mind's own object, that's one set. And then you have the mind, which decide what kind of object, project the objects of each of these five senses. And then it also analyzes its own object. So you have another set. So this is quite tricky. So you can see how does the mind decide what to do with thoughts? It's the way the mind was brought up, the memories yet in the past, the kind of people we know in the present, the kind of religion we have, so many things, So the mind creates this idea. The mind is the creator, yes. The mind twists things. The mind is the censor. The mind decides what you should know, what you should not know. So we never really know the right things. The mind does create this virtual world for us. And we really believe in this. And that's the big issue which the Buddha tries to tell us, see through it. That's called wisdom.
Yeah, just now you asked this question. So other than the five senses, what other ways can we have input from our world, right? I used to know a friend who can see spirits.
Okay.
Like in our school, she will like say there's someone standing there and things like that. Or like for camps, she will be the one doing the Reiki.
Okay, it's safe now.
So what is that? Is the eye?
Okay, the kind of knowledge, it is very hard to verify. If it does exist, it will be under the mind, the category of the mind. Okay. If it is physical, you and I can see it too, isn't it?
Just different eyes.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the eye, there's only the physical eye. What the mind sees is something else. It's what the mind projects. You see. I mean, if only you can see and we all can't see, obviously it's not really unless we all close our eyes, So what I'm saying is that there are some things we can be quite sure. Not everyone can see it. Only this person sees it. So either he is psychic or there must be some other explanation. Yeah. So this is a very tricky area.
Okay. So say like clairvoyance, claircognizance, this kind of clair whatever. It's a mental factor function.
Yes, it's possible, but you have to really investigate what really is going on. And believe me, sooner or later, the law of physics will be able to explain it. Otherwise, it cannot happen. The rule is very simple. Whatever happens, happens because it can happen. Anyone can prove that rule wrong. You know what I mean? Right? So it's just a matter of time. There was a time people said, oh, it's impossible for metal to fly. I mean, how can metal fly? It's heavier than the air. Now we've got airplanes. So it depends on what kind of age we're living in. And there are of course, there are certain things we do not yet understand. And perhaps with meditation, with a clearer, higher level of development, we could understand and see these things. But my point is, if you cannot understand this, you cannot explain it, then it's not safe, it's not very useful. It's best not to get too involved with it because you don't know what you're dealing with. Unless you're familiar with it through, because it's a bit happening to you, then you notice it, I work with friends who have schizophrenia. I find it really interesting. They come and speak with me. And I find that I don't have to guard myself. I can talk anything I want with them, and they won't think I'm crazy. And I ask them what kind of questions. How do they feel? They say, "Oh, I can see devas, angels." Okay, describe to me. And it's amazing how they know all these things. Then I reason within myself. I say, well, they must have read some of these things, and what they learn when they're younger now, it becomes real in their minds. But it's not real to me, you see. So it's a private reality. Right? So private realities create problems, isn't it? If it's too private, too long. All right? I mean, we respect them, but I don't think we should follow them that far because we don't know what it is. Okay, I mean, we need to know what's going on. Right? Okay. People on Zoom also can ask, I think, right?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really related to your talk, but related to what you just said. So are devas real?
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, ask what you like. Sona can answer them.
What are they?
Okay, devas, almost every religion have some kind of belief in divine beings.
Okay.
So the Buddhist belief is based on the Indian belief, devas. The word deva has got two etymologies, two senses. One is they're very bright, they're radiant. All right. The other one is they're playful, especially the lower realms, the nearer the human world. So it basically like the Greek gods. The Greek gods are very playful, but look what happened to them at the end, Anyway, took out this really beautiful, amazing belief short. I think when the Buddha speaks of devas, if you logically think, what could he be probably speaking of? Because we don't see devas around us today. I mean, the way he describes us in the suttas, I would say they are aliens.
Oh, interesting.
This is my theory. I'm not saying I'm right. Don't. You can quote me, but just say it's just a shaky idea. I mean, imagine the Buddha is teaching to all these beings, who come from distant quadrants, Star Trek thing, And whenever I watch Star Trek, Star Wars, I say, wow, Buddhism. So, I mean, it's amazing. Many of those stories relate to what I understand about Buddhism. So imagine, in the future, when we do have contact with other planets, so it is aliens that come here and they say, yeah, I bet Buddha, that'd be wonderful, isn't it, right? On the other hand, if you get someone in the world and tells these aliens, do you believe in God? Then you say, oh, what God? We don't have this kind of idea in our universe. So it's more difficult if I was a God believer. Whereas if I were a Buddhist, I think I could communicate much better with the aliens. So it is an idea.
Your hypothesis is that they
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I think I have a talk among you a few weeks ago about aliens as well.
Okay.
Not about aliens, a Q&A was about aliens.
Okay.
Prabhu watch History Channel. Prabhu should watch History Channel.
Okay.
There's a series on ancient.
Right.
He quotes the History Channel.
Oh, okay. No, I always try to be logical, and see what are there possible logical ways of explaining, rather than just blindly believe. And you go to a tree and pray, please, when you pass my exam, A poor monk, it happened is this person came to ask him, please pray for me, bless me, and he obliged. And then she failed the exam. And then she went back and scolded the monk and said, your blessing didn't work. I mean, that's really unfair, I mean, the monk was very foolish to have done the blessing in the first place. So, we should not, bring Buddhism down so low. All right.
Thanks for the explanation.
No problem. Yeah. I mean, it's really something I enjoy talking about.
I have one.
Yeah.
So when you say about early Buddhism, it's still different from Theravada, right? Or is it the same?
Oh, they're not the same. Early Buddhism is much earlier than Theravada. Theravada developed in Sri Lanka. Okay. So there are certain things which are very Sri Lankan. Of course, that we don't have to accept. But there are, of course, they preserve the Pali Canon for us. Yeah. But the Pali Canon, of course, much older than Theravada. Or should I say, much of the Pali Canon. So we have enough in the Pali Canon to work with. And then we have the Chinese translation of what's called the Ur text of the Pali Canon. Okay, so we do have enough stuff to compare and work with.
So like in this current Buddhism, you try to separate the things that was like added when to Sri Lanka.
It is possible to study. And so my principle is this, my approach is this, my focus is early Buddhism. So it's very clear, and I know there's so many scholars studying this, and not like 50 years ago, my time, we hardly have a book on Buddhism. You find it's become very clear now. And then you find all this Zen and stuff, there are lots of politicking going on, people inventing koans, people inventing genealogies, and that thing, There's a lot of politics going on there. So, and then there's Abhidharma. There's a time when I had problems with Abhidharma also. I was not too keen on it. But then as I begin to understand the suttas better, I find Abhidharma can also help understand the suttas. So my point is this, whatever that can help us understand early Buddhism better, we can use it, even science fiction, for example. Those alien stuff. I say, wow, this interesting idea, you could explain the Devas, for example. So I'm open-minded in that sense. But if someone comes to me and say, Amitabha, I said, how do you know Amitabha exists? Now I will say that. Yes, I got to ask you this, because you've been assuming you recite his name and that he exists. Have you studied how he originated from Persia or from Afghanistan, during the Kushan period and so on, So I like Buddhists to ask this kind of question, and not just blindly turn Buddhism into dogmas. So they have turned Amitabha into a dogma, Kuan Yin into a dogma, you see. Kuan Yin is very important to the Chinese culture, yes, but then again, we got to understand why. And when you understand why, you go back to the origins. And it's time we can do that because we are in modern times where we are not living in China. It will take decades to go across the desert to go to India to get some scriptures, and then lose them over the river and then go back to India, get it again, and then come back, Or we are somewhere else. I mean, even if you're in America, you're in Singapore, you can still access the same suttas, So it's time we go back to the original text. Why don't we do that when we have them, you see? So this is my question.
Because actually, for example, for me, I got heard about, because when I tried to learn about Buddhism, like, especially because my country doesn't have this.
Yes.
So all we got is imported.
Very true.
And like the majority there is like from Japan because they have a very big Japanese population.
Yes.
But then if you get out a bit of Japan, like you go to Tibet.
Yes.
And like sometimes you learn from one thing from one school that contradicts our school. And I get like so confused.
Yeah. That's why do not identify with anything. On the other side of the continent, Peru and Chile, the Tibetans are very well known and very widespread. So people get caught up with Tibetan Buddhism. So that's the other story. So I have a few Theravada friends there, and so we have this little website, So we work together to study the Buddhist texts. Yeah. So I mean, it's easier to study the Pali text actually. So it's a choice we should make. You follow the crowd, or you really want to know something for yourself.
Just another small comment, like you say, like you don't Buddhism should be like the dogma. So like you don't want the Buddhists to follow path as a dogma fashion. But I noticed that it's very interesting. Like, so I noticed a lot of Westerns because they kind of try to revolt against Christianity or the religion they were raised.
Yeah.
So like they are totally skeptical about like Christian but when it comes to Buddhism, they just
accept everything.
they just obey.
Yeah, that is why I was very curious. Why do people behave like that? So I studied sociology, psychology to explain to myself what's going on. For example, I told my friend in South America, I said, why your fellow men are so interested in Tibetan Buddhism rather than Theravada? It's because they remind them of the Catholics before that. Very similar, the power and the lamas and so on. So it's just something new, but different garb, different dressing. So, but people like that. What to do? So we go on teaching, we go on explaining, we go on educating people. Education is very important. When you understand the nature of the mind, that's why psychology is really useful. You understand how the mind works, then you're not going to be easily taken away by all this religious idea. Much of religious idea are not true. You have to believe them, right? Whereas in Buddhism, you're allowed not to believe. I mean, you won't get thrown out, of the monastery. You say, I don't believe in rebirth. How many Westerners don't believe in rebirth? The teacher will tell you, it's okay, time will come, you understand better, right? Of course, even usually karma, they will say, yeah, okay, I can understand everything. So our idea is you go step by step. You can't force wisdom onto someone. You patiently teach, and as long as the person is willing to learn, and yes, there is hope and joy there. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. Any other questions? Oh, time is running. Ask.
Actually, we still have like 18
Only?
people on Zoom.
Yeah.
Actually, all the doctors are.
Okay. Yeah, it saves them a lot of time.
Oh, because like actually to me, like initially I thought like the topic can be more like maybe for me or maybe many people also can be applied, can be like, because just now I think brother you mentioned something about not like imposing like the past memories onto the present.
Right.
Like so how can we use like the Buddhist teachings to
be in the present. To be in the present.
Yeah, to face the past memories.
Okay.
I mean, I understand to be mindful of the present moment, but like what kind of attitude can have towards the past memories?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. Because the topic is very general, so I have to, if you like focus on certain ideas, I could do that too. There are many things we can do with meditation, all right? And for example, loving kindness meditation. So you know these past memories keep coming back, they're very painful, but then you got to be very specific. So the counselor will ask you, just tell me the story behind all this pain. And then next stage you ask, what is it that's troubling you? Which part of this is troubling you? So once this is assured, this is ascertained and defined, then the counselor will try to use some meditation techniques. For example, loving kindness is very popular. So you will tell this person, all right, when these thoughts come to you, number one, you tell yourself, these are just thoughts. Remember that teaching on Bahiya's teaching? They are just thoughts, nothing else. Thoughts, right? In fact, if the person has got some kind of positivity within early, then the person may be can heal even faster. For example, we do a lot of smiling in the meditation I do. We do loving kindness, may I be well and happy, and we smile. May I be at peace with myself, we smile. So this inner smile helps to push away thoughts. So imagine this person saying, oh, I'm suffering, and then he smiles. Now, it just doesn't, they don't go together, smiling and suffering. So when you smile, the angry thought just goes away. Because anger, sadness, guilt, they're all thoughts. So our idea is to strip away this dirt, and this smiling is a broom. May I be well and happy is this clean broom. If that works, that's good. You keep on smiling and then say those words again. And it goes on like that. The idea is to habituate yourself and don't allow this habit to keep forming. We do not, feed this habit. Another way is we can say things like, okay, I accept this, but I forgive myself completely for this. It's all gone in the past. I forgive myself completely, or I accept myself completely. So this person keeps saying this, and this is the new message the person puts in instead of the old voice. So that's one way you have to displace this by displacement. There is one sutta which gives 7 methods of overcoming such thoughts, the Vitaka Santana Sutta. Right? So this is one way you displace thoughts. There are a few others, but of course this will be another talk. Right? Of course, you can still ask if you have more questions in this direction.
Yeah, have you heard of EFT?
EFT?
Emotional freedom technique, where there's the tapping.
No.
Or you say, I love and accept myself.
Okay. Oh, that's just like loving kindness, yeah.
I love that.
No, but it's like loving kindness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the past 3-4 years, it's been in the academia quite a bit. Where psychologists study the effect of EFT compared to or the other more well-known forms of psychology treatments.
Yeah.
So it's found to have a lot of good impact. Right. It sort of like works on the meridian points.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
Where there's a somatic effect plus the words. So it's like double reinforcement.
Yeah. I'm beginning to feel many of these good things, they come from Buddhism somehow, earlier on, and then they kind of develop it, combining with many other, I don't know, New Age things or some other helpful things. I mean,
yoga is before this time. Chakras.
Yeah, they're kind of around the same time, Buddhism, 2,100 years. So what I'm doing is called Hatha Yoga. This is a physical exercise. There are many kinds actually. Now, the thing is, someone called our millennium of the mind. So it's quite apt actually, quite interesting. People are not concerned about the way the mind works, how to heal the mind. So you find meditation playing a big role. Whatever we may speak against Kabat-Zinn, he's done an amazing thing in bringing meditation, mindfulness, sweeping the world. See? But
it's not actually relating to what you said and page 152 of you.
All right.
So you mentioned about at the start, the Buddha is teaching us to be more human. And I also remember when I learned early Buddhist teachings with Brother Richard.
Oh, okay, yes.
He talked about how there's no advanced Buddhism. There's just basic Buddhism. And I think it's because one
very wise man.
I can relate to that.
All right.
At the same time, here it talks about the recollection of deity, right? 18.3.
Yeah, yes.
And there's that understanding that the Buddha has certain divinity or features of godliness. So can you maybe explain the dissonance that I'm feeling?
Yeah, that's good you raised that one up. Yeah, I was quite troubled. I said, the Buddha is saying, okay, you can do this. They're called the inspiring meditations. I think there are 5 or 6 of them. Recollection on the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, on charity, on moral virtue. In other words, you reflect, I have kept my precepts, and then you feel very happy, and then you can meditate. So you get this energy from these practices. And the last one is devatas, I mean, these deities. Yeah? And I asked myself, none of us worship deities. Why does the Buddha include this? Could it be some? I mean, someone would say, "Oh, someone added this in." I don't think it could be that easily explained. Then I told myself, okay, let's get back to the Buddha stuff. He's teaching, people are coming to him. Oh, there are people who believe in deities. Even today, there are people who believe in gods and deities and spirits. So the Buddha is giving this idea to these people. They say, okay, if you believe in deities, you reflect on how did they become deities. They're good deities, right? So they do all these good things. That's what made them deities. So you reflect on that goodness, not on the deitiness. It is the interesting thing, is it? And same thing with the God idea. The Buddha talk about the Buddha teaches the four Brahma Viharas, the four divine abodes, beginning with loving kindness, to those who believe in the God idea, in Brahma and so on, the Brahmin followers. Whereas to those who really follow him, he says, okay, you go straight to breath meditation. So these Brahmins, when they meditate, they picture all these gods living very happily, peacefully, and they feel very joyful. And it's very good for God believers today. They can still reflect on godliness, and then they feel very peaceful. Then they let go of this idea of godliness. They don't need the basis anymore. There is this joy, and from the joy, they are totally calm. And they come out of it, they are able to reflect on impermanence much more effectively. So the Buddha is amazing. He knows all these techniques on how to deal with the people, or no matter what belief you have, you could do that. You see? All right. So does it explain that devata thing?
So it's a mudita practice.
Yeah, you can say that. Yes. Yeah, your dharma is very advanced. Yeah. Mudita means joy. Okay. Altruistic joy. You have.
Like some of these got like seer of the world and things like those all these the Devatanu Sati. We talk about the different practices of Buddha.
Yeah.
It's beyond joy. It's actually also having aspiration to be more than human. Yeah.
Are you talking about
like the Buddha who is,
yeah, yes.
who is not human, not God.
Neither, yeah, whatever defines a human is no more within because he has no more great head illusion. Only his body is human. His mind, unclassifiable. I mean, it's not like ours anymore. I mean, it's awakened mind. So he feels pain in a sense, right? Because the mind's there, but there is no greed, hatred, delusion. There's no negativity. I mean, it's just like us. We have reached a level where we don't go around killing people because they look different or they don't agree with us, they don't come for Buddhist talks. We don't do that. So we are very civilized. And we naturally will never do that, you see. So imagine when the Buddha has reached that level where he has not even the thoughts of it. It's possible, in other words. Yeah, so we're talking about quite logical things, yeah, not just imaginary things. And there is something there, the quality of the Buddha, teachers of gods and humans. I like that one. Sattva Deva Manusana, gods and humans. Of course, it's quite difficult to explain this in those early years for me. Again, here I say, well, Devas could be, he's teaching the aliens. I mean, they are said to come after 10 p.m. and 10 to 2. Yeah, after at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., the middle watch. That's where everyone's kind of asleep, it's very quiet, and they will come up with this amazing, brilliant lights. Like those. I mean, even if you see those movies today, whenever they special lens and it will be really bright, you see. So it's almost like, hey, this is what the Buddha is talking about. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Well, if you have any questions that trouble you, you can still message me on Facebook or Telegram. I get a lot of this, questions all over the world. People who, if you're really serious, I will definitely answer the best I can. I get people who are doing their MAs and PhDs writing to me also. I say, look, you have your own supervisors, please go to them. Okay.
week.